Well, good morning and welcome to Thought for the Week. As I'm recording this, the rain is literally lashing against the window pane outside. But mercifully, here in good old Northern Ireland, whilst we might often complain about the rain, we do not have to endure the frightening events of the hurricane season, such as in the Caribbean and the southeastern United States. I have a sister who lives in Texas, and whilst Texas is to a lesser extent affected by the hurricane season than some states, she still says that when the hurricane season comes, the National Weather Service forecasters watch the developing weather systems very carefully so that the inhabitants of those southeastern states know what to expect. Over the years, more and more people have begun to take these forecasts very seriously, but this has not always been the case. There have been those who have ignored the warnings to evacuate areas prone to serious flooding or other natural disasters. And in some instances, they have paid for their folly with their lives. In other words, to be forewarned is to be forearmed. But this forearming is not always automatic. Responsible action is required beforehand. We can look at the book of Genesis and the story of Joseph. And at one point in this story, Joseph is required to bring some interpretation to a dream experienced by Pharaoh, the ruler of Egypt. Joseph's interpretation of Pharaoh's dream points out this forearming truth very clearly. Joseph told the ruler, "This will happen just as I have described it, for God has shown you what he is about to do." Genesis 41, verse 28. Then, after giving the graphic details of the enormity of this impending problem, Joseph added, "My suggestion is that you find the wisest man in Egypt and put him in charge of a nationwide program." Verse 33. So firstly, there is that declarative statement concerning God's intentions, and then came the suggestion about the appropriate action. Joseph told Pharaoh what would happen if he followed through on the suggestions. Verse 36 says, "There will be enough to eat when the 7 years of famine come. Otherwise, disaster will surely strike the land, and all the people will die." So the options were abundantly clear. The choices were unmistakably spelled out. Pharaoh had been forewarned, but would he forearm himself? But the record shows in the biblical account that he did, and he chose Joseph, the wisest man in Egypt, to head up this nationwide program. You know, one of the greatest mysteries of our relationship with God is the matter of divine sovereignty and human responsibility. The scriptures are full of references to God spelling out and ruling supremely in the affairs of men, demonstrating distinctly that he is truly the sovereign Lord. Yet at the same time, God instructs men how to respond to what he says, and he expects them to do so with glad obedience and joyful trust. And their actions are important and significant. But within all of this, often attempts to harmonize these aspects of God's revealing truth have often proved notoriously difficult. God is going to do what he says he is going to do. And as God, well, he is perfectly free to do so. And whilst God has a plan, will we in obedience take the necessary action to be prepared? Even when the fine details of philosophical and theological debate lead to unanswerable questions, simple faith that God is as good as his word is possible. And so, wise and responsible, prompt responses are eminently practical. This does not mean that we should ignore the perplexing questions of life. But it does mean that we should not spend time debating when the time for action is at hand, any more than when an approaching hurricane heralds the occasion for a thorough debate on the accuracy of the forecasters' predictions. And so we leave it there for today. God bless for now. Goodbye.